What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to call something out that I'm not particularly happy with the sounds of coming into Modern Warfare 3, and this is something I only very briefly touched on in the past, but I do feel like it's worth a call out here. This is the fact that for some of the aftermarket parts, which are conversion kits for a gun, they are going to be unlockable through weekly challenges. And while they have mentioned this in the past, they went into a bit more detail in one of Friday's blog posts, and based on how they've described it, I'm not really liking the sounds of this. Now, I do want to be clear up front here, this is by no means a deal breaker for the game or anything. I'm still looking forward to the game, but when I see something like this that I'm not a fan of, I think it is worth at least calling out so you guys are aware of this. And diving right in, let's explain how this works. So they did mention in that blog post that we're going to be getting 6 of these aftermarket parts within the launch window of the game, and it looks like 5 of those are just going to have dedicated challenges. Once you reach the max level for that gun, then it opens up that challenge for the aftermarket part. Once you complete that challenge, then you have that aftermarket part you can put on that gun. And that sounds perfect to me. It's like a nice little reward for finishing up the max level on that gun. You get this super powerful or potentially super powerful attachment, or at the very least an attachment that drastically changes how the gun works. The problem here, though, comes with that 6th aftermarket part that's going to be available within the launch window. They say it's going to be available as the first weekly challenge post-launch. I don't know if they're going to have weekly challenges literally day 1 or maybe not till a week after. But this is the Jack Raven kit on the MCW, and it is going to be unlockable via a weekly challenge. And they also mentioned many of the aftermarket parts in the future will also be added in this way, where they come as a weekly challenge. And they have a note right here that explains this a little bit further. For aftermarket parts that are unlocked through a weekly challenge, like this one, once the challenge expires at the end of the season, the aftermarket part moves into the Armory challenge section for a new and always available unlock challenge. So from the sounds of this, these weekly challenges will pop up where you have 1 week to complete this, and if you complete it, you get an aftermarket part for a gun. And again, as far as I can tell, if you don't complete it within that week, then you have to wait until the next season launches in order for a permanent challenge to open up that you can complete at any time at your own pace. You don't have to just complete it within 1 week. And assuming I am understanding all of that correctly, and I've stated this correctly, I really don't like the sound of this because they're relying on FOMO, or the fear of missing out, for actual in-game playable content. And FOMO is a tool they've been using for quite some time now in Call of Duty, but usually with cosmetic content. So like with seasonal battle passes, for instance, if you don't complete that battle pass, anything you miss out within that battle pass, you most likely won't ever be able to unlock that again in the future. And when it comes to the cosmetic content, I don't really mind all that much, because if I miss out, I'm just missing out on something that looks different. I'm not missing out on any gameplay content. However, when it comes to playable content, I don't like the sound of this. What if, for whatever reason, you can't play for a particular week? Maybe you have a vacation plan for that week, or you're just a really busy person, or you have a really busy week on your hands. I don't think any justification is really needed here anyway. This is a video game, not your job. What if you miss out on that week? Well, now you have no option to progress toward that playable content until the next season launches. And what happens if that aftermarket part becomes a very powerful weapon, for instance? And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this turns out being the case, because if we just look at the beta, we had access to 2 different aftermarket parts, and both of them were really good, especially that Renetti conversion kit. That turned a secondary weapon into one of the best primary SMGs in the game, at least in my eyes. But let's just take a look at what I would consider to be like a worst case scenario with the way this is set up. Hopefully it will never actually be this bad, but it's just what could potentially happen with this. Let's just say there's an aftermarket part available as a weekly challenge, and it becomes extremely powerful. It actually turns it into the best gun in the game. And for whatever reason, again, I don't think you should need to justify this, you were unable to play for that week, or you were unable to play enough that week to unlock this. And since we're looking at worst case, let's say this is also very early on in a season. Well, it looks like for the rest of that season, you're going to have to deal with playing against people that have this really powerful item that you don't even have a path to unlock at this point. All you can do to get that is wait for the next season to launch, and then you can complete a challenge and unlock it and be on the same page as those people. I don't really mind having to grind for something that other people have, but it's going to take you a while to grind for it and get it. And I think even in recent years, they've done a pretty good job keeping things relatively fair and balanced, like with the fact that you get brand new guns with the free version of the Battle Pass. You don't have to spend a penny. Sure, it's going to take you a little bit longer to get through those tiers and unlock those guns, compared to somebody that just buys the Battle Pass and buys the tier skips or buys blueprints, for instance. But at the end of the day, you at least always have a way to progress toward unlocking that. You might not have it now, but you can at least always work on getting it. Every time you log in to play, you're progressing toward unlocking that thing. When it comes to these weekly challenges though, at least from the sounds of it, based on how they've described it, If you miss out on that week, you can't even progress toward that until the season is over. And that will obviously create a lot of frustration for those that miss out on that, because at that stage, they'd be completely locked out of playable content that other people have and are using against them. And presumably at that point, the only way to match them would be to probably buy a blueprint, because I'm assuming they're also going to have blueprints with these aftermarket parts in order to really capitalize on that FOMO. So if you do miss out on that week, maybe you will cave and spend $20 on a blueprint that has that aftermarket part unlocked. To me, that sounds pretty horrible. Like I said earlier, I have no problem if it's cosmetic only content, because it's not like you're missing out on things that actually affect the gameplay, and you're not competing against people that have this thing that you can't get unless you spend real money, at least at that moment in time. So yeah, at least as far as I can tell based on how they've described this system, I really don't like the sounds of this. I am hoping that perhaps they just weren't detailed enough and maybe it won't be as bad as we think. Maybe those weekly challenges will keep popping up week after week, and sure, you have to complete it within a 1 week span, but you could at least have a shot at it every single week. Like, there's always some way that you could potentially be progressing toward that. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's not completely out of the question with how they described it. Additionally, I think the severity of this really depends on several factors. The first factor is the timing of this weekly challenge. If we go back and assume that this is just available for 1 week out of an entire season, and if you miss that week, you're screwed, well, it would really suck if that 1 week to unlock that was really early on in the season. And therefore, if you miss that weekly challenge, now you have to play for potentially a couple months with no ability to progress toward this item that a bunch of other people are using against you. And that would really suck, whereas it would be less severe, although I still wouldn't like this. It wouldn't be nearly as bad if this weekly challenge came toward the end of the season. So if you do miss out on that, then like at most you're looking at like a week or two where you have no ability to progress toward that, but the next season's right around the corner and you'll have access to that challenge that never goes away as soon as the next season drops. An additional factor that comes into play here as far as how severe this would be is what kind of weekly challenges are we talking about? How much dedication is going to be required in that week to complete that challenge? Is it something that's going to require a bunch of dedication and multiple play sessions throughout that week? Like, even if you're focusing on it 100%, is it going to take you more than like 6 hours to complete in a week? Or is it going to be reasonably easy, where if you put your mind to it, you can have it done within like a 2-hour gaming session? Again, this is just another factor to consider as far as how bad could this potentially get. And that's pretty much where I'm going to have to leave it here. I'm really hoping that I'm overreacting here a little bit and it's not going to be as bad as I think it could potentially turn out to be. But I definitely wanted to talk about this topic because it is something that has me a little bit nervous, and I don't like the sounds of it based on what we can tell so far. Of course, time will tell as to how severe this is going to be. If they handle it right, maybe it will only be a very minor annoyance and not really a big deal by any means. Like if they bring this weekly challenge back multiple times throughout a season, so you have multiple shots to get this, or they make that weekly challenge relatively easy to complete within a couple hours, maybe it won't be as bad as I think. But it is something I'm at least a bit nervous about, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Based on everything we've seen surrounding these aftermarket parts and the fact that at least many of them down the road will be unlocked via weekly challenges, what are your thoughts on this system? Do you like the idea of having these weekly challenges to unlock these aftermarket parts? Or are you a bit more skeptical and nervous about the potential for this system to be coming in? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.